Nero Wolfe and the signature kills. It was the second Monday in October when death came knocking at our door. Though at the time I only thought it was an inconsiderate pest who didn't understand that Nero Wolfe would be in the plant rooms until 11 o'clock, and that no force on earth, not fire, flood, or the second coming, would bring him down before then. I was at my desk in the office of the old brownstone on West 35th Street, sorting through the morning mail and trying to decide if the check from the Hartwell case had enough zeros to justify the 3 weeks of aggravation that woman had put us through. The amount was satisfactory, but the memory of her shrill voice still made my teeth ache. Caesar, the largest and most imposing of Wolfe's 5 Dobermans, was lying by the door to the hall, his dark eyes half closed but his ears alert. The other 4 were scattered through the house. Diana probably in the kitchen with Fritz, hoping for scraps, Apollo and Mars wrestling in the front room, and Minerva standing guard at the foot of the stairs, as was her self-appointed duty. The doorbell rang at 9:47, not a polite ring, not a patient ring, but a continuous aggressive assault that suggested someone was leaning on the button with their full body weight. Caesar's head came up, and a low growl rumbled from his chest, not his stranger danger growl, but his annoying human growl. I'd learned to distinguish between them in the 2 years since Wolfe had acquired the dogs, after that unpleasant business with the Meredith gang. Fritz Brenner, Wolfe's chef and housekeeper extraordinaire, appeared in the doorway. His usually placid face showed concern, and his Swiss accent was more pronounced, as it always was when he was agitated. "Archie, there is someone at the door who seems most distressed. They have been ringing for 2 minutes." "Let them ring," I said. "Maybe they'll get tired and go away." But the ringing continued. If anything, it got more insistent. Now Diana and Minerva had joined Caesar at the door, all 3 dogs forming a semicircle of muscled alertness. "The neighbors will complain," Fritz said. He had a point. Mrs. Brunner next door had already filed 2 complaints about the dogs barking, though considering her cat liked to sit on our stoop and taunt them through the window, I figured she had it coming. I got up and checked the security monitor, another recent addition to our domestic fortress, installed after someone had tried to deliver a bomb disguised as a package of orchid fertilizer. The figure on our stoop was hunched against the October wind, wearing what looked like a $1,000 overcoat that had been slept in. Male, mid-40s, brown hair going grey at the temples. His face was turned away from the camera, but something about his posture screamed desperation. "Recognize him?" Fritz asked, peering over my shoulder. "No, but that coat didn't come off the rack at Macy's. Money client, maybe." The doorbell had stopped ringing, but now the pounding started. The dog's growls intensified. All right, I muttered. I took the Marley .38 from my desk drawer and slipped it into my jacket pocket. Better safe than sorry. "Come on, boys and girls, let's see what the cat dragged in." I opened the door but kept the chain on. Through the gap, I could see the man's face clearly now, pale, unshaven, with the kind of bags under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept in days. "We're closed," I said. "Please." His voice was hoarse. "I need to see Nero Wolfe. It's life and death." "It always is. Mr. Wolfe doesn't see anyone before 11 o'clock. Come back." "They're dead," he practically screamed it. "3 of them are dead. And I'm next. Please, you have to help me." I studied his face more carefully. There was genuine terror there, not the manufactured drama of someone looking for attention. "Name?" "Kramer, Theodore Kramer." Inspector Kramer is my brother." Well, that changed things. Not that Inspector Kramer of Manhattan Homicide and Nero Wolfe were friends. Their relationship was more like 2 heavyweight boxers who respected each other's ability to inflict damage. But family was family. I unhooked the chain. "Come in. Don't make any sudden moves. The dogs are protective." Theodore Kramer practically fell through the doorway. The Dobermans circled him once, sniffing, before Diana apparently decided he was harmless and padded back toward the kitchen. The others maintained their watchful positions. I led him to the office and pointed to the red leather chair. "Sit. Drink?" "God, yes." I poured him 3 fingers of Wolfe's brandy. Wolfe would complain about the unauthorized use of his liquor, but the man looked like he needed it. Kramer's hands shook as he took the glass. "Now," I said, settling behind my desk with my notebook, "tell me about these deaths." He took a long pull of brandy before answering. "Haven't you seen the papers? The signature killer?" I had, of course. For 2 weeks, the headlines had been screaming about a series of elaborate murders. The press, with their typical flair for the dramatic and complete lack of taste, had dubbed them the signature kills, because the killer left the same elaborate mark burned into each victim's skin. Not a name, but a complex, almost artistic design that looked like a cross between a signature and an abstract drawing. "I've seen them," I said. "What's your connection?" They were my partners. Business partners. We were part of a development consortium 5 years ago, the Diamond District project in Brooklyn. You must have heard of it. I had. It was supposed to transform the Brooklyn waterfront into a gleaming residential and commercial paradise. Instead, it had become a series of bland, overpriced boxes that were mostly empty. Harrison Blackwood, Jerome Faulkner, and Patricia Drummond, Kramer continued, all dead in the last 2 weeks, all killed in these horrible, elaborate ways. How many partners were there originally? 7, including me. Martin Reeves died in a car accident last year. At least we thought it was an accident. Now I'm not so sure. That leaves me, Ronald Gillette, and Margaret Lessing. Where are Gillette and Lessing now? Ron's in Paris on business. Has been for 3 weeks. Margaret, he paused, took another drink. Margaret disappeared 4 days ago. Her husband called the police. Her car was found at her yoga studio, but she never went inside. I was taking notes in my personal shorthand that drives Wolfe crazy, but works for me. You said you're next. Why do you think that? He reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. His hand shook as he placed it on my desk. This came to my apartment this morning. The envelope was expensive paper, cream-colored, with Kramer's name and address written in elaborate, almost calligraphic script. Inside was a single sheet of the same paper. The message was brief but chilling. Your signature awaits. Below the words was the same elaborate design that had been burned into the 3 victims' bodies. Have you shown this to your brother? I went to him first. He has 2 detectives watching my apartment building, but I don't trust them to stop this artist. He spat the last word, like it tasted bad. Everyone knows Nero Wolfe is the best. I'll pay anything. 100,000, 200,000, whatever it takes. The money was attractive. We hadn't had a big case in 2 months, and the bills for maintaining a 4-story brownstone, 10,000 orchids, 5 Dobermans, and Wolfe's appetite weren't getting any smaller. But I knew Wolfe's peculiarities. He found serial killers distasteful, too theatrical, too modern. He preferred his murders simple, with clear motives like greed or revenge. Wait here, I said. I'll see if Mr. Wolfe will come down. But you said he doesn't. He doesn't, but your brother's name might carry some weight. Plus, you're already here, and he hates untidiness. I left Kramer with Caesar standing guard, and took the elevator to the plant rooms. The elevator was another recent upgrade, reinforced cables, emergency brakes, and a weight capacity that could handle Wolfe's 1/7 of a ton, plus a full load of orchid supplies. The humid air of the plant rooms hit me as soon as the doors opened. The smell of earth and growing things was overwhelming. As always, I found Wolfe in the tropical room with Theodore Horseman, examining a spectacular yellow and purple cattleya. Sir, I said. He didn't look up. It is 23 minutes before 11. Inspector Kramer's brother is downstairs. Theodore Kramer. He believes he's the next victim of the signature killer, and he has evidence to support that belief. He's offering 200 grand for our help. Wolfe made a noise that can only be spelled pew-few, his all-purpose expression of disgust. Serial killers are for psychiatrists and journalists, not detectives. His 3 dead partners were Harrison Blackwood, Jerome Faulkner, and Patricia Drummond, all killed with different but elaborate methods, all marked with the same signature. He received a threatening note this morning. Theatrical nonsense. $200,000 of theatrical nonsense. Plus, Kramer will be involved whether we take the case or not. He'll be in and out of here disrupting everything, probably at meal times. That got his attention. Wolfe looked up from the orchid, his eyes, the same color as the beer he consumed in vast quantities, narrowing slightly. His brother, you say? Younger brother. Made his fortune in real estate before the age of 40. Now someone's killing off his partners one by one. Wolfe was silent for a moment, considering Theodore Horseman, a small, elderly man who knew Wolfe's moods better than anyone except me, continued working with the orchids, pretending not to listen. The murderer announces himself? Wolfe finally asked. Or herself. The note promises that Kramer's signature awaits. Fancier. Melodrama. But I could see him weakening. A puzzle was a puzzle, and Wolfe could never quite resist a good puzzle, especially one that paid well. I'll see him at 11, he said finally. Have Fritz prepare the office, full protocol, which meant make sure the recording equipment was on. The drinks were ready, the dogs were positioned strategically, and all potential weapons were out of reach of visitors. We'd learned to be careful over the years. I went back downstairs. Theodore Kramer had finished his brandy and was staring at the globe in the corner, though I doubt he was seeing it. Caesar hadn't moved from his guard position. Mr. Wolfe, we'll see you at 11, I said. That's 14 minutes. Can I get you some coffee? Coffee would be, yes, thank you. Fritz brought coffee, real coffee, not the bitter swill most Americans drink, and some of his homemade pastries. Kramer ate mechanically, like a man who couldn't remember his last meal. At exactly 11 o'clock, I heard the elevator. Wolfe entered the office, all 7/16ths of a ton of him, moving with that peculiar grace that always surprised people who expected someone his size to lumber. He circled behind his desk, settled into his custom-built chair, and arranged himself. Only then did he look at Theodore Kramer. Sir, you have 8 minutes to convince me to take your case. Kramer started talking, fast and desperate but coherent. He told us about the Diamond District development, a massive project that was supposed to revitalize the Brooklyn waterfront. 7 partners had pooled resources and connections to make it happen. The project had been technically successful but artistically a disaster, turning what could have been innovative architecture into cookie-cutter profit machines. We made money, Kramer said. Lots of money, but we also made enemies. What kind of enemies? The kind who thought we'd destroyed something beautiful for profit. There was an architect, Delilah Anderson, who designed the original buildings. They were spectacular, truly innovative, but they would have cost 30% more to build. So you fired her. We bought her out, paid her for the designs but built something cheaper. She didn't take it well. Define didn't take it well. She had what I suppose you'd call a breakdown, said we'd destroyed her masterpiece, turned her art into garbage. She tried to sue, but the contracts were clear. She'd sold us the rights to modify the designs as we saw fit. When was this? 5 years ago, right after the project started. And you haven't heard from her since? Not directly, but Kramer hesitated. Continue. There were incidents, minor vandalism at the building sites, graffiti that was almost artistic, elaborate designs spray-painted on the walls. We could never prove it was her. Wolfe's eyes had closed, but I knew he was listening intently. Tell me about the deaths, in detail. Kramer went through them one by one. Harrison Blackwood had been found in his locked study, killed by a poisoned dart fired from a mechanism built into his own desk drawer. The poison was something called batrachotoxin, derived from South American poison dart frogs. Blackwood collected exotic weapons, Kramer explained, had a whole room full of them. The killer used his own collection against him. Jerome Faulkner had drowned in wine, literally. Someone had rigged his wine cellar to flood while he was down there selecting a bottle for dinner. The cellar door had been barred from the outside. Faulkner was a wine snob, Kramer said. Spent more on wine than most people spend on houses. He died surrounded by millions of dollars worth of vintage bottles. Patricia Drummond had been strangled with a garrote, made from gold wire, then posed in her art gallery like one of her sculptures. Patricia fancied herself a patron of the arts. The way she was positioned, the killer took time, made her into an exhibit. and each victim had the signature burned into their skin. Yes, post-mortem according to the police, the same design every time. Wolfe opened his eyes. "Show me the note you received." I passed it across the desk. Wolfe examined it without touching it, studying the handwriting and the drawn signature. "The script is distinctive," he said slowly. "Almost artistic in itself. The person who wrote this took pride in its appearance." He looked up at Kramer. "Who else knows about this note?" "Just my brother. And now you." "The remaining partners, Gillette and Lessing. Tell me about them." "Ron Gillette is a financial wizard. He handled the money side of the Diamond District. He's been in Paris for 3 weeks, setting up a new development there." "Can you verify he's actually in Paris?" "I spoke to him yesterday. He called when he heard about Patricia." "That proves nothing. Phone calls can be made from anywhere. And Margaret Lessing?" "Margaret was our connection to city government. Her family has been in New York politics for generations. She smoothed the way with permits, zoning, that sort of thing." "Her husband?" "Robert Lessing. He's an electrical engineer, works for the city. They've been married 15 years. "Children?" "No." Wolfe was silent for a long moment. The dogs, sensing the tension, had arranged themselves around the room, Caesar by the door, Diana near the windows, Mars and Apollo flanking Kramer's chair, and Minerva by Wolfe's desk. "Mr. Kramer," Wolfe said finally, "I will take your case on one condition." "Anything." "You will move into this house immediately. The guest room on the 3rd floor is available. You will not leave without my permission. And Mr. Goodwin's escort. You will eat what Fritz prepares and follow all household rules, particularly regarding the scheduled hours. Do you agree?" Relief flooded Kramer's face. Yes, of course. Thank you. Mr. Goodwin will accompany you to collect your necessities. Take Caesar and Mars. They're the most intimidating. Full protocol, Archie." Which meant, assume we're being watched, take the Heron sedan with the reinforced doors, carry extra ammunition, and don't take any chances. "Come on, Mr. Kramer," I said, standing. "Let's get you packed before someone decides to make you into art." Chapter 2. The Collector's End. Kramer's apartment was on the Upper East Side, a penthouse that probably cost more than most people see in a lifetime. The building had a doorman, security cameras, and the 2 detectives Kramer had assigned, Rowcliffe and Mathers, both of whom looked thrilled to be on babysitting duty. "Goodwin," Rowcliffe said when he saw me. He said it the way you'd say fungus or tax audit. "Rowcliffe, keeping the world safe from theoretical killers. This is real, wise guy. 3 bodies with the same signature. 4, if you count Margaret Lessing." His face changed. "They found her?" "Not that I know of. But if she's been missing 4 days, what would you bet?" I left him chewing on that and took Kramer and the dogs up to his apartment. It was all glass and chrome and modern art that looked like someone had sneezed paint onto canvas. Caesar and Mars immediately began investigating, their noses working overtime. "Pack for a week," I told Kramer. "Maybe more." While he packed, I examined the apartment. The security was good, reinforced door, quality locks, windows that didn't open wide enough to admit a person. But if someone really wanted in, there were always ways. Mars suddenly growled, low and menacing, staring at the front door. Caesar joined him. Both dogs focused on something I couldn't see or hear. I drew the Marley and moved to the door, checking the peephole. But on the floor, visible through the gap under the door, was the edge of an envelope. "Stay back," I told Kramer, who had emerged from the bedroom with a suitcase. I opened the door carefully, gun ready. The hallway was still empty, but there on the floor was another cream-colored envelope, addressed to Theodore Kramer in that same elaborate script. The dogs wanted to pursue whoever had left it, but I called them back. Whoever it was had a head start and knew the building. Instead, I picked up the envelope with my handkerchief and brought it inside. "Open it," I said. Kramer's hands were shaking again. Inside was a playing card, the King of Diamonds, with the signature drawn across its face in what looked like blood. "The King of Diamonds," Kramer whispered. "That's what they called me. During the Diamond District deal, I was the one who brought everyone together. I called Wolfe immediately. Someone was just here, I reported. Left another message. The King of Diamonds with the signature in what might be blood. Where were the police? Good question. I'm about to go ask them. Don't bother. Come home. Immediately. The urgency in his voice was unusual. Wolfe didn't do urgent unless things were serious. We made it back to the brownstone in 20 minutes. I'd pushed the heron hard, running yellows and taking corners like I was racing at Indianapolis. The dogs seemed to enjoy it, though Kramer looked green by the time we arrived. Wolfe was in the office with Inspector Kramer, who looked like he'd been chewing nails and finding them too soft. "Ted," Kramer said when he saw his brother, "what the hell were you thinking, leaving protective custody? Your protective custody didn't stop someone from slipping a note under my door while your men were supposedly watching." Theodore shot back. "What note?" I showed him the playing card. Kramer's face went from red to purple. "Stebbins," he bellowed, though Sergeant Stebbins wasn't there. "I'll have their badges for this." "Later," Wolfe said. "Inspector, I need the complete files on all 3 murders, everything including what you haven't released to the press." "Like hell. Would you prefer your brother to be victim number 4? They had one of their staring contests, the kind that could melt steel. Finally Kramer stood. "I'll have Stebbins bring them over. But Wolfe, if you interfere—" "I never interfere. I solve. Mr. Kramer will be staying here under our protection. My men failed, as you just admitted. Good day, Inspector." After Kramer left, muttering threats about licenses and obstruction, Wolfe turned to Theodore. "Mr. Kramer, I need a complete list of everyone involved with the Diamond District project. Not just the partners, but contractors, architects, city officials, journalists who covered it. Everyone. That could be hundreds of people. Then you'd better start writing. Mr. Goodwin will show you to your room. We dine at 7:15 precisely. Fritz will bring you lunch at 1. I took Kramer up to the guest room on the 3rd floor. It hadn't been used in months, but Fritz had already been through. Fresh sheets, flowers on the dresser, towels in the bathroom, and a decanter of brandy on the nightstand. "The door locks from the inside," I said. "The windows are reinforced glass, bulletproof actually. One of the dogs will be outside your door at all times. Don't open it for anyone but me, Fritz, or Mr. Wolfe." "You really think I'm safe here?" "Safer than anywhere else in New York. Get some rest, work on that list. I'll come get you for dinner." I left him with Apollo curled up outside his door and went back to the office. Wolfe had his eyes closed, his lips pushing in and out, which meant he was thinking hard. "Well?" I asked. "The pattern is wrong." "Which pattern?" "Sit," he said, opening his eyes. "Report everything you observed at the apartment." I did, in detail. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "The murders were theatrical, yes, but also intensely personal. Each death method related specifically to the victim's interests or personality. That suggests intimate knowledge and long-held resentment. Like an architect who had her masterpiece destroyed. Perhaps, but then why announce the next victim? Why give us warning? Maybe the killer wants to be caught? No, he was definite. The killer wants to be seen. There's a difference. The signature, the calling cards. This is performance, but for whose benefit? Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Diana and Minerva immediately went to alert mode. It was Sergeant Pearlie Stebbins with 3 boxes of files. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "The inspector says, you're to return these within 48 hours, he growled. "And if any of this ends up in the papers—" "Pearlie," I said, taking the boxes. "When have we ever leaked to the press?" He snorted and left. I carried the files to the office, where Wolfe was already clearing space on his desk. "We'll start with Harrison Blackwood," he said. "Read." For the next 2 hours, I read aloud while Wolfe listened with his eyes closed. The files were thorough. Crime scene photos that would put you off your lunch, witness statements, forensic reports, even the detective's notes. Harrison Blackwood had been 53, a collector of exotic weapons and art. His study was a shrine to instruments of death from around the world. African spears, Japanese swords, medieval crossbows, Indonesian kris blades. He'd been found by his housekeeper at 7 in the morning, slumped over his desk with a dart in his neck. The mechanism that fired the dart was a masterpiece of engineering. Someone had built it into his desk drawer, triggered by opening a hidden compartment where Blackwood kept his most valuable pieces. The poison was rare, expensive, and had to be specially imported. The killer knew about the hidden compartment, I noted, and knew Blackwood's routine. He always checked his collection first thing in the morning. More than that, Wolfe said. The killer had access to his study for long enough to install the mechanism. This wasn't done quickly. The signature had been burned into Blackwood's chest, post-mortem. The coroner estimated it had been done with a custom-made brand, heated to precise temperature. Professional, I said. Artistic, Wolfe corrected. Continue. Jerome Faulkner's death was even more elaborate. His wine cellar had been turned into a death trap. Someone had installed pumps connected to several of his wine barrels, triggered by motion sensors. When Faulkner entered the cellar, the pumps activated, flooding the room with thousands of dollars worth of wine. The door had been barred from the outside, a simple wooden bar that wouldn't have looked out of place in a wine cellar. He drowned in a 1947 Chateau d'Yquem. I read from the report. Approximate value, $50,000 a bottle. Symbolic, Wolfe murmured. Drowning in excess. Patricia Drummond's murder was the most theatrical. She'd been strangled with a garrote made from gold wire. Analysis showed it was 24-karat gold, worth about $3,000. Her body had been posed in her gallery after death, positioned to mirror a sculpture she'd recently acquired, a piece called Transcendence that showed a figure reaching toward heaven. The killer spent hours with the body, I read. Positioning had to be exact. The killer is an artist, Wolfe said, opening his eyes. Or believes themselves to be one. This isn't just murder, it's creation. The phone rang. It was Lon Cohen from the Gazette, my usual source for information the public wasn't supposed to have. Archie, he said without preamble. You need to know something. Margaret Lessing's body was just found. My stomach dropped. Where? Her own house, in the panic room, if you can believe it. Locked from the inside. Suicide?
That's the weird part.
She'd been dead for at least 3 days, since before she supposedly disappeared. Carbon monoxide poisoning. But here's the kicker. She had the signature too, burned into her left hand. How does someone burn a signature into their own hand? Exactly. The cops are stumped. But I figured Wolfe might want to know, seeing as Theodore Kramer just hired you. Nothing was secret in New York. If you knew the right people, and Lon knew everyone. Thanks, I said, and hung up. I reported to Wolfe, who sat silent for a moment. Call Inspector Kramer, he said finally. Tell him I need to see Margaret Lessing's house immediately. He won't allow it. He will if you tell him. I know how the killer got into her panic room when it was locked from the inside. I stared at him. Do you? Of course. The same way they're going to try to kill Mr. Kramer, despite all our precautions. He stood, which was remarkable. Wolfe never left the house on business if he could avoid it. Get Saul, he said. We're going to need surveillance on Ronald Gillette in Paris, and have Fred and Ori ready. Before this is over, we'll need everyone. As I reached for the phone, all 5 dogs suddenly stood at once, hackles raised, staring at the door to the hall. I drew the Marley and yanked the door open. The hall was empty, but on the floor was another cream-colored envelope, addressed to Nero Wolfe. Inside was a chess piece, a black king, and a note in that same elaborate script. The game has begun. Your move, detective. The signature was drawn below, perfect and precise. How? I asked. How did they get past the alarms, the locks, the dogs? Wolfe picked up the chess piece, studying it with an expression I'd rarely seen, something between admiration and concern. Because, Archie, he said softly, the killer isn't coming from outside. They're already here. The implications of Wolfe's statement sent me into action. I searched every room in the brownstone, the Marley in my hand, Caesar and Diana flanking me. Fritz was in the kitchen, preparing lunch, exactly where he should be. Theodore was in his room, Apollo still on guard. Theodore Horseman was in the plant rooms, tending the orchids. Everything was exactly as it should be, except for the envelope that had materialized in our hallway like a magic trick. "It's impossible," I said when I returned to the office. "No one could have gotten in." "Not impossible," Wolfe said. He had returned to his chair, but hadn't touched the beer Fritz had brought. "Merely improbable. Consider the timeline. The envelope was placed after Inspector Kramer left, but before Sergeant Stebbins arrived, a window of approximately 12 minutes. During which I was here, you were here, Fritz was in the kitchen, and all 5 dogs were accounted for. Yet the envelope appeared." He picked up the chess piece again. "The Black King. In chess, the king is vulnerable, barely mobile, entirely dependent on other pieces for protection. An interesting choice of message." The phone rang. It was Saul Panzer, the best operative in New York when I wasn't available. "Kramer's letting you in?" I looked at Wolfe. He was already standing. "Extraordinary circumstances," he said, "require extraordinary measures." 20 minutes later, we were in Forest Hills, standing outside a Tudor-style mansion that looked like it had been transplanted from the English countryside. Wolfe had suffered the car ride in silence, his bulk filling most of the back seat, his hands gripping the door handle every time I took a turn. Saul met us at the door, his weathered face grim. "It's upstairs. The panic room's off the master bedroom." Getting Wolfe up the stairs was an adventure. He took them one at a time, breathing heavily, muttering under his breath about architects who didn't install elevators. But he made it, and we stood in the doorway of Margaret Lessing's panic room. It was state-of-the-art, reinforced walls, separate ventilation system, monitors showing every room in the house, enough supplies to last a week. Margaret Lessing was still there, sitting in a leather chair facing the monitors. She looked peaceful, like she'd just dozed off watching television. "The door was locked from the inside," Saul explained. "Electronic lock can only be opened from within once it's engaged. No override." Wolfe examined the room without entering, his eyes taking in every detail. The ventilation system? Separate from the house. But here's the thing. Saul showed us a small canister attached to the air intake, hidden behind a decorative grate. Carbon monoxide, rigged to release when the door locked. "So she locked herself in and triggered her own death?" I asked. "That's what it looks like. But she couldn't have burned the signature into her own hand after she was dead," Wolfe finished. "Show me the body." We approached carefully. Margaret Lessing had been an attractive woman in her 50s, well preserved in that way that money allows. Her left hand was palm up on the chair's armrest. The signature burned clearly into the skin. Wolfe bent, as close as his bulk would allow, studying the burn. "Curious," he said. "What?" "The burn pattern. It's too perfect. When someone burns themselves, even intentionally, there are hesitation marks, variations in pressure. This is uniform, as if done with a single application. A brand. Yes, but applied post-mortem, after she was already dead from the carbon monoxide. But the room was locked from the inside," Saul protested. "No other way in or out." Wolfe straightened, a small smile playing at his lips. "Mr. Panzer, what do you notice about the monitors?" Saul studied them. They showed various rooms of the house: living room, kitchen, front door, back garden. "They're all working." "Yes. And—" "I saw it then. They're recording. There's a hard drive, which the police have taken," Saul said. "But," he produced a USB drive from his pocket. "Backup storage. The system automatically copies everything. I figured you'd want to see it." Wolfe nodded approvingly. "Excellent. What else?" Saul showed us a day planner on the desk, open to the day Margaret had disappeared. One appointment was circled DA 10 a.m. discuss signature. District Attorney, I guessed. "That's what the cops think. But check this." Saul pulled out his phone, showing us call records he'd somehow obtained. Last call from Margaret's cell was to someone named Delilah Anderson. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. The architect, Mr. Kramer, mentioned her. He turned to me. "We need to speak with Miss Anderson immediately." "Already tried," Saul said. "She's in Mount Sinai Hospital. Attempted suicide 3 days ago. Overdose. She's in a coma. Wolfe was quiet for a moment, then said, "We're done here. Archie, we need to return home immediately. Mr. Panzer, go to the hospital. If Delilah Anderson wakes, I want to know instantly." "On it," Saul said, and disappeared with his usual efficiency. The ride back to the brownstone was silent, except for Wolfe's occasional grunt when I took a corner too fast. I could practically hear his brain working, sorting through facts like a computer processing data. When we got home, Theodore Kramer was in the office with Inspector Kramer. The inspector looked ready to explode. "Wolfe, what the hell were you doing at my crime scene?" "Solving your case," Wolfe replied, settling into his chair with obvious relief at being home. Margaret Lessing was murdered, despite appearances. The room was locked from the inside. Indeed, yet the signature was burned post-mortem. Unless you believe in ghosts, Inspector, someone else was in that room. Impossible. No, merely clever. Wolfe rang for beer. "Mr. Kramer, tell me about Delilah Anderson's relationship with the partners." Theodore looked confused. "Relationship? She was our architect, then she wasn't. She sued, she lost. End of story." "Was it? Did she have personal relationships with any of the partners?" "Well," Theodore shifted uncomfortably. "There were rumors about her and Nathan Cross." "Who is Nathan Cross?" "He was supposed to be our 8th partner, brought in specifically to work with Delilah on the designs. They were involved, engaged, actually. But when we decided to cut costs and modify her designs, Nathan sided with her. He pulled out of the partnership." "What happened to him?" "I don't know. After Delilah lost the lawsuit, they both disappeared. That was 4 years ago." Wolfe's eyes were closed now, his lips pushing in and out. "Inspector, I need you to check something. Was Robert Lessing, Margaret's husband, ever involved with the Diamond District project?" Kramer looked surprised. "Bob Lessing? He's an electrical engineer for the city. Why would he?" He stopped, his face changing. "Son of a bitch. He did the electrical inspection for the buildings. Which means he had access to all the blueprints, all the security systems, all the structural details. You think Bob Lessing is involved? I think you should find him and ask him. Also, you might want to check when he last visited his wife." Kramer was already pulling out his phone, barking orders at someone. While he did, I studied the chess piece that had been left for us. "The Black King," I said to Wolfe. "Why black?" "In chess, white moves first. By giving us the Black King, the killer is saying they've already made their opening move. We're playing from behind." Fritz appeared with lunch, lamb chops with mint sauce, roasted vegetables, and a salad that was a work of art in itself. Even in the middle of a murder investigation, standards had to be maintained. "Fritz," Wolfe said as he served, "has anyone unusual been to the house in the last week? Deliveries, repairs, visitors?" Fritz thought carefully. "The orchid food delivery on Tuesday. The man who came to service the alarm system on Thursday." And he paused.
"Yes?"
"There was someone yesterday. A city inspector," he said, checking the gas lines. "But I didn't let him in. You were with the orchids, and the dogs didn't like him." "What did he look like?" "Medium height, brown hair, glasses, very ordinary. But Caesar growled at him through the door. And you know Caesar, he doesn't growl without reason." Wolfe and I exchanged glances. "Thank you, Fritz. From now on, no one enters this house without my explicit permission. No one." After lunch, I called the hospital to check on Delilah Anderson. Dr. Patel, her physician, sounded exhausted. "No change. The overdose was massive. If she wakes, and that's a big if, there may be significant brain damage." "What exactly did she take?" "A combination of prescription medications, Ambien, Xanax, and something we can't quite identify. The toxicology is still running tests." "Was there a note?" "Actually, yes. The police have the original. But it was strange. Just one line. The signature must be completed." I reported this to Wolfe, who was reading the files on Jerome Faulkner's death. "Interesting," he said. "The signature must be completed. Not my signature or the signatures. Singular, specific. You think the signature isn't just a mark, it means something more. I'm certain of it. The question is, what? He picked up his beer. Where is Mr. Kramer's list? Theodore had delivered it an hour ago. 12 pages of names. Everyone he could remember being involved with the Diamond District project. I handed it over. Wolfe studied it, occasionally making small sounds of interest. Then he stopped, his finger on one name. Dennis Ashford, he read. Project attorney, deceased. So, I asked, when did he die, Mr. Kramer? Theodore thought. 3 years ago? Heart attack. He was working late, and the cleaning lady found him the next morning. Was an autopsy performed? I don't know. Why would there be? He had a heart condition. Wolfe set the list aside. Mr. Goodwin called Dr. Vollmer. Dr. Vollmer was Wolfe's physician and occasional consultant on medical matters. I got him on the phone and handed it to Wolfe.
Doctor?
Yes, I'm well. I need information about batrachotoxin, specifically whether it could mimic a heart attack if administered in small doses. I see. Yes. And detection after death. How long? Thank you. He hung up and looked at us. Batrachotoxin, the poison that killed Harrison Blackwood, causes cardiac arrest in sufficient doses. In smaller amounts, it would appear to be a natural heart attack. After 3 years, it would be undetectable even if someone thought to look. You think Ashford was murdered? Kramer asked. I think he was the first victim, a test case. If the killer could successfully murder him without detection, they could proceed with the more elaborate plans. The phone rang. It was Saul. Mr. Wolfe, you need to know something. I just watched them change shifts at the hospital. The doctor who's been treating Delilah Anderson, he doesn't exist. Explain. I checked with hospital administration. No Dr. Nathan Cross on staff. But there's been someone in a doctor's coat going in and out of her room for 3 days, and nobody questioned it because he had the right ID badge. Nathan Cross, Wolfe said softly, using his real name. Hubris. There's more, Saul continued. I followed him when he left. He went to an apartment building in Tribeca. I'm watching it now. The address? Saul gave it. I wrote it down and showed it to Wolfe, who compared it to Kramer's list. That's Delilah Anderson's address, Theodore said. From the lawsuit papers. Wolfe stood, an event rare enough that we all stared. Inspector, you need to get to that apartment immediately. Mr. Goodwin and I will go to the hospital. Like hell, Kramer said. This is police business. Then make it police business. But hurry. I believe we'll find that the woman in the hospital is not Delilah Anderson, and the real Miss Anderson is very much alive and planning another murder. Whose? Wolfe looked at Theodore Kramer. His, of course, tonight, despite all our precautions. But he's here, protected. Protection is meaningless when the killer is already inside your defenses. We need to move, now. The ride to Mount Sinai Hospital was memorable primarily for Wolfe's white-knuckled grip on the door handle and his periodic exclamations when I ran red lights. Mars sat in the front seat, alert and ready, while Wolfe filled the back like a small mountain of concerned genius. You're certain the woman in the hospital isn't Delilah Anderson? I asked, swerving around a taxi that had stopped dead in the middle of the street. Certain enough to risk leaving the house twice in one day, Wolfe replied, which was answer enough. At the hospital, we made our way to the ICU with Mars padding alongside. Several nurses tried to protest the dog, but Mars's vest identifying him as a security animal and Wolfe's imperious manner swept objections aside. Room 314 was guarded by a uniformed cop who knew me by sight. Goodwin, what are you doing here? Preventing a murder. Is anyone with the patient? Just the doctor. He's been checking on her every hour. Real dedicated. I pushed past him into the room. Mars at my heels. The woman in the bed was unconscious, hooked to multiple machines, her face partially obscured by tubes and bandages. A man in a doctor's coat stood beside her, adjusting an IV drip. He turned when we entered, and I got my first good look at Nathan Cross. He was handsome in that forgettable way. Medium height, brown hair, pleasant features that would blend into any crowd. The perfect person to walk through a hospital unnoticed. "Can I help you?" he asked calmly. "You can start by stepping away from the patient," I said, my hand moving to the Marley. His eyes flicked to the gun, then to Mars, who was now growling low in his throat. "I don't understand. I'm Dr. Matthews. I'm treating—" "You're Nathan Cross," Wolfe said from the doorway, his bulk preventing any exit. "And that woman is not Delilah Anderson." For a moment, Cross maintained his facade. Then he smiled, a cold, satisfied expression that transformed his pleasant face into something chilling. "Prove it," he said. Gladly. Wolfe moved into the room, forcing Cross to back toward the window. "The woman in that bed has been unconscious for 3 days, yet Delilah Anderson's apartment shows signs of occupation as recently as this morning. Mr. Panzer observed someone entering and leaving. Additionally, the suicide note, the signature must be completed, is not the expression of someone planning to die, but someone planning to disappear. Conjecture. Fact, which Inspector Kramer is currently confirming at Miss Anderson's apartment. I imagine he's finding quite a bit of interesting evidence." Cross's smile widened. "Evidence of what? That a disturbed woman attempted suicide? That her former fiancé, now a doctor, has been caring for her?" "You're not a doctor," I said. "The hospital has no record of you." "Administrative error happens all the time in large hospitals." "Then you won't mind if we check this patient's fingerprints against Delilah Anderson's?" For the first time, uncertainty flickered in his eyes. "You can't. She's in critical condition." "She's in a medically induced coma," Wolfe corrected. "Maintained by the drugs you've been administering. She's probably a homeless woman, similar height and build to Miss Anderson, whom you've kept unconscious to provide an alibi." The phone in my pocket rang. It was Kramer. "Archie? We're at Anderson's apartment. You need to see this." "Busy right now, Inspector. We have Nathan Cross at the hospital." "Cross? Damn it. Hold him." "The apartment is full of—" He paused. "My God. The walls. Every wall. What about them? They're covered with the signature. Hundreds of them. Thousands maybe. Drawn. Painted. Carved. And Archie, there are blueprints here. Detailed plans for every murder, including one for Theodore, that's scheduled for tonight." I relayed this to Wolfe, keeping my eyes and gun on Cross. "The game's over," I told him. "We have the evidence, we have you, and we know Delilah is alive." Cross laughed. Then, a sound that made Mars bare his teeth. "You have nothing? I'm a concerned doctor." "Delilah is a troubled woman who attempted suicide. Whatever's in her apartment is the product of a disturbed mind. A disturbed mind that somehow managed to plan and execute 4 elaborate murders while in a coma," Wolfe asked. "Prove I had anything to do with it." "We will," Wolfe said. "But first, let's discuss the real Delilah Anderson. Where is she?" "I don't know what you mean." "She's here," Wolfe said with certainty. "In the hospital. She wouldn't trust you to handle this alone. She's watching, waiting for the right moment." Cross's eyes involuntarily flicked toward the door, and I knew Wolfe was right. "Mars," I said quietly. "Find." The Doberman immediately went to work, nose to the ground, then the air. He moved to the door, sniffed, then pointed down the hallway with his entire body, the classic pointer stance. "Good boy," I said. "Show me." We moved as a group, me with Mars leading, Cross in the middle, Wolfe bringing up the rear with surprising agility for his size. The uniformed cop followed, confused but willing. Mars led us down the corridor, past other rooms, to a supply closet. He sat in front of it, tail wagging slightly, looking pleased with himself. I yanked open the door. Inside, dressed in scrubs and a surgical mask, was a woman with intelligent eyes and elegant hands. She was holding a syringe. "Hello, Delilah," Wolfe said. She looked at us for a long moment, then pulled down the mask, revealing a face that would have been beautiful if not for the madness burning in her eyes. "Hello, Mr. Wolfe," she said calmly. "I've been expecting you." The standoff in the hospital corridor lasted perhaps 10 seconds, though it felt like an hour. Delilah Anderson stood in the supply closet, syringe in hand, looking as composed as if we'd interrupted her afternoon tea. Nathan Cross stood frozen between us, calculating his odds. Mars maintained his point, every muscle tense. The uniformed cop had his hand on his weapon, but looked thoroughly confused about what was happening. "Miss Anderson," Wolfe said, his tone conversational, "would you care to explain the significance of the signature? It's really quite clever." She tilted her head, studying him. "You know, I suspect it's not merely a signature, is it? It's a blueprint." A smile played at her lips. "You are as intelligent as they say. Yes, it's a blueprint. The floor plan of the building that should have been my masterpiece. The one they destroyed for profit. The centerpiece of the Diamond District," Wolfe continued. "A revolutionary design that would have redefined modern architecture. Instead, they built boxes. Profitable boxes," she said bitterly. "They took my soul and turned it into money. So you decided to sign your work on their bodies. Each death was a work of art, Mr. Wolfe. Blackwood the collector, killed by his own collection. Faulkner, drowning in his precious wine. Patricia, turned into the bad art she peddled. And Margaret Lessing, locked away in her panic room, just as she locked me out of my own creation. Did you figure out how we did it?" "The husband," I said. "Robert Lessing. He helped you." Her smile widened. "Robert understood art. His wife was a Philistine who cared only for money and status. He helped us access their homes, their security systems. In return, he got freedom and Margaret's fortune." "And Dennis Ashford?" Wolfe asked. "He was your test case, wasn't he?" "You are thorough," Cross said, speaking for the first time since we'd left the room. "Ashford was the lawyer who wrote the contracts that destroyed us. A small dose of batracotsin in his coffee, and his weak heart gave out. No one suspected. That success gave you confidence to proceed with your grand design," Wolfe said. "But why announce yourselves to Theodore Kramer? Why warn us?" Delilah's eyes gleamed. "Because it's not enough for them to die. They need to know why. They need to understand that their deaths are the completion of my signature. The building they refuse to build will be constructed from their bodies." "Poetic," Wolfe said dryly. "Also insane." Her face darkened. "Insane. They drove us to this. They took everything. My designs, my reputation, my future. Nathan lost his investment, his standing in the business community, all for their profit margins. So you decided to become killers." "We decided to become artists," Cross corrected. "Death can be art when done correctly." "And Ronald Gillette?" I asked. "He's in Paris." Delilah laughed. "Is he? Check again. Ronald Gillette has been dead for 2 weeks, locked in his hotel safe. He always did value money over everything else. It seemed fitting." The uniformed cop finally found his voice. "I need to call this in." "Do it," I said. "Get Inspector Kramer here. Tell him we have both killers." As he reached for his radio, Cross moved, faster than I expected. He grabbed the syringe from Delilah's hand and lunged toward me. Mars was faster. The Doberman hit Cross at waist level, 90 pounds of trained muscle sending him sprawling. The syringe went flying, shattering against the wall. Whatever was in it hissed as it ate into the floor tiles. "Acid," Wolfe noted calmly. "Not for killing, but for disfiguring. Another signature." Cross tried to get up, but Mars had his arm in his jaws, not breaking skin, but making it clear that movement would be painful. "Good boy," I said. "Hold." Delilah hadn't moved during the altercation. She stood in the closet, watching with an expression of mild disappointment. "It's over," I told her. "Is it?" She looked at Wolfe. "Tell me, Mr. Wolfe, have you checked on Theodore recently?" My blood went cold. I pulled out my phone and called the brownstone. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Finally, Fritz answered. "Goodwin residence." "Fritz, is Mr. Kramer all right?" "Yes, he is in his room with Apollo." "Why? Check on him. Now. Don't hang up. Just go check." I heard Fritz moving, his footsteps on the stairs, A pause, then knocking. "Mr. Kramer, are you all right?" No answer. "Mr. Kramer." The sound of a door opening. Then Fritz's sharp intake of breath.
Archie, he's unconscious.
"There's something, a device on the heating vent. It's hissing." "Get him out!" I shouted. "Get him out of the room now. Open all windows." I could hear Fritz dragging Theodore, Apollo barking frantically. "Call 911, I told him. "Tell them possible poison gas. We're on our way." I hung up and looked at Delilah. She was smiling again. "The heating system," she said calmly. "Robert installed a little surprise weeks ago when he came for dinner, triggered by temperature. When the heat came on this evening, as it does every evening at 6:30, the canister would release. By the time anyone noticed, Theodore would be dead in his locked room. Another impossible murder." "But we caught you," I said.
Did you?
"The device is already activated. Even if he survives, which is doubtful, you can't prove we put it there. Robert was invited to dinner. He could have been checking the heating as a favor." Wolfe had already turned and was moving toward the exit with surprising speed. "Officer, arrest them both. Archie, we need to get home immediately." "But now." We left Cross and Anderson to the growing crowd of police and hospital security and ran, in Wolfe's case, to the car. Mars jumped in the back with Wolfe, and I drove like I was qualifying for the Indy 500. We made it in 12 minutes, a record that probably violated every traffic law in New York. Ambulances were already there. Theodore Kramer was on a stretcher being loaded in. Fritz stood on the stoop, looking shaken. "Is he—" I started. "Alive," Fritz said. "But barely." The paramedics said another few minutes. Wolfe climbed the stairs to the guest room, with me following. The room reeked of chemicals. The device was still attached to the heating vent, a small canister with a timer and release mechanism. "Ingenious," Wolfe said, examining it without touching. "It could have been installed weeks ago, waiting for the right moment." "Robert Lessing," I said. "He was here for dinner 2 weeks ago." "Yes, probably installed it then. The perfect alibi. He'd be with his mistress when Theodore died." Inspector Kramer arrived then, red-faced and breathing hard. "Wolfe, we have Anderson and Cross in custody. They're both claiming the other is responsible." "They're both responsible," Wolfe said. "But you'll need Robert Lessing to make the case complete." "Already got him. Picked him up at his girlfriend's apartment. He's singing like a bird, trying to cut a deal." "No deals," Wolfe said firmly. 6 people are dead, 7 if you count Dennis Ashford. This was premeditated mass murder, dressed up as art." We went back to the office, where Wolfe settled into his chair with visible relief. The dogs arranged themselves around the room, sensing the tension was easing. "How did you know?" I asked. "About the woman in the hospital not being Delilah?" "Several things. The suicide note. The signature must be completed. Not the expression of someone planning to die, but someone with unfinished business. Also, the timing. She supposedly attempted suicide 3 days ago, but Margaret Lessing had been dead for at least that long. The real Delilah needed an alibi, so she found someone who wouldn't be missed, a homeless woman, probably, and kept her unconscious. And Nathan Cross posing as a doctor? Hubris. They thought they were so clever. They used his real name for the fake identity. Also, who else would Delilah trust to maintain the charade? The phone rang. It was the hospital. Theodore Kramer was stable but critical. He'd inhaled enough of the gas to cause serious damage, but Fritz's quick action had saved his life. "One more question," I said. "The envelope that appeared in our hall, how did they do that?" Wolfe picked up the chess piece that had come with it. "They didn't. We did it ourselves." I stared at him. "What?" "Think, Archie. Who was in the house at the time? You, me, Fritz, Theodore Horseman, and Theodore Kramer. The dogs would have alerted us to an intruder. So one of us." I stopped. "Theodore Kramer." "No. He was genuinely terrified, but he was carrying something planted on him, probably in the lining of his coat. When he hung it in the hall, a small device released the envelope at a programmed time. We brought their message in ourselves." Diabolical. Artistic, they would say. Wolfe rang for beer. Have you noticed, Archie, how people use art to justify the most horrible actions? As if creativity excuses cruelty. Before I could answer, Fritz appeared with the beer and an announcement. Mr. Wolfe, there are reporters at the door. Send them away. Also, Mr. Cohen is on the phone. Lon Cohen, who never met a story he didn't want to print. I took the call. Archie, I hear you've solved the signature killer case. 3 arrests, including Robert Lessing. That's front page material. Tomorrow, Lon, tonight we're tired. Just tell me one thing. Is it true the signature was actually a building plan? How did you? Never mind. Yes, it's true. The killers were signing their work with the blueprint of a building that was never built. That's either genius or insane. Can't it be both? I hung up and found Wolfe reading one of Delilah's sketches we'd retrieved from her apartment. The signature was drawn over and over, each iteration slightly different, but recognizably the same pattern. It would have been beautiful, he said quietly. The building. Yes, revolutionary. A fusion of organic and geometric forms that would have changed architecture. Instead, they built boxes. That doesn't justify murder. No, he agreed. Nothing justifies murder, but I understand the rage of seeing your masterpiece destroyed for profit. You wouldn't kill for your orchids. He looked at me sharply. I would kill to defend them from immediate threat. I would not kill for revenge if they were destroyed. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. One is protection, the other is vanity. Delilah Anderson and Nathan Cross couldn't see the difference. They turned their grief into grotesque performance art. 3 days later, Theodore Kramer was well enough to receive visitors. I drove out to the private clinic where he was recovering, at Wolfe's instruction to deliver our final report and collect our fee. He looked smaller in the hospital bed, diminished by his brush with death. The confident real estate mogul had been replaced by a man who'd seen his own mortality. Mr. Goodwin, he said when I entered, I owe you my life, you and Mr. Wolfe. Fritz, actually. He's the one who pulled you out. I've already arranged for a bonus for him, a substantial one. I sat in the visitor's chair. How are you feeling? Like I've been poisoned, which I suppose I have. He managed a weak smile. The doctors say there might be some permanent lung damage, but I'll live. That's what matters. Is it? He stared at the ceiling. 7 people are dead, because we prioritized profit over art. Maybe Delilah was right. Maybe we deserved. Stop, I said firmly. Nobody deserves to be murdered. Delilah Anderson and Nathan Cross had choices. They chose murder. That's on them, not you. But if we'd built her building, then maybe she would have found another reason to kill. Or maybe not. We can't know. What we do know is that she and Cross planned and executed 7 murders. They're killers, regardless of their motivation. He was quiet for a moment. I've been thinking about her building. I still have the original plans. So, I'm going to build it, as a memorial to the victims. And, he paused, as an apology. To who? To art, I suppose. To the idea that some things matter more than money. I didn't know what to say to that, so I handed him Wolfe's report. 12 pages of detailed analysis of how the murders were committed, how they were solved, and how Theodore's life was saved. Mr. Wolfe's bill is attached, I said. He looked at it without flinching. $300,000. We saved your life, solved 7 murders, and caught 3 killers. Mr. Wolfe thought it was reasonable. It is. He pulled out his checkbook. More than reasonable. As he wrote the check, I asked, what will happen to the Diamond District now? I don't know. With 4 partners dead and me nearly joining them, the project is in chaos. The city might take it over. Or it might just rot. Either way, I'm done with it. And Robert Lessing? He's trying to claim he was coerced, that Delilah and Nathan forced him to help. Nobody believes him. He killed his own wife for money, and a younger woman. That's not coercion, that's greed. I took the check and stood to leave. One more thing. Inspector Kramer wanted me to tell you. They found Ronald Gillette's body in Paris. He'd been dead for 2 weeks, just as Delilah said. In his hotel safe. In his hotel safe. He suffocated. The safe was on a timer lock he didn't know about. Another artistic murder. Theodore shuddered. How could they travel to Paris, commit murder, and come back without anyone noticing? Nathan Cross went, used his real passport. Nobody was looking for him because nobody knew he was involved. He was in and out in 2 days. They thought of everything. Not everything, I corrected. They didn't think Nero Wolfe would take the case. Back at the brownstone, I found Wolfe in the plant rooms with Theodore Horseman, working with the phalaenopsis. The old gardener had been shaken by the events, but had refused to take time off. Orchids don't care about human drama, he'd said. They still need tending. Mr. Kramer? Wolfe asked without looking up from a particularly spectacular specimen. Recovering, he paid in full and added a bonus for Fritz. I handed him the check. Satisfactory. He moved to the next plant. Any news on the trials? Lorne says they're all pleading not guilty. Delilah and Nathan are claiming temporary insanity brought on by artistic temperament. Robert Lessing is claiming coercion. They'll be convicted. You sure? The evidence is overwhelming. Also, juries don't like artistic pretension as a defense for murder. He finally looked at me. Did Mr. Kramer mention his plans? To build Delilah's building? Yes. You think that's wise? I think it's irrelevant. The building didn't kill anyone. The people who were angry about it not being built did. But won't it be a monument to murder? Or a monument to what might have been? Perspective matters, Archie. We took the elevator down to the office, where the dogs were lounging in their usual spots. They'd been heroes during the case, especially Mars, who'd taken down Nathan Cross at the hospital. We should get them something special, I said. A reward. Fritz has already increased their food portions and bought them new toys. They seemed satisfied. The doorbell rang. All 5 dogs immediately went to alert, but it was just Lily Rowan, fashionable as always, in an outfit that probably cost more than most people's rent. Archie, she said, breezing past me into the office. I hear you've been playing with serial killers again. They came to us, I protested. They always do. She settled into the red chair with practiced elegance. I also hear there was poison gas in the house. Very dramatic. Very nearly fatal, Wolfe corrected. If Fritz hadn't acted quickly, Mr. Kramer would be dead. But he's not. And you've solved another impossible case. We should celebrate. We don't celebrate death, Wolfe said. We celebrate justice, Lily countered. And survival. And the fact that Archie didn't get himself shot this time. The case isn't over, I pointed out. There are still the trials. The trials are formality, Wolfe said. Our part is done. We've established the truth. What the courts do with it is their business. Inspector Kramer arrived then, looking tired but satisfied. Thought you'd want to know, he said, settling into his usual chair without invitation. All 3 of them confessed. Wolfe's eyebrows rose. Indeed, once they realized the others were talking, they all rushed to tell their version. Delilah Anderson claims it was all about art and justice. Nathan Cross says it was about revenge for destroying their lives. Robert Lessing just wanted his wife's money. 3 killers, 3 motives, I observed. But one plan, Kramer continued. Delilah was the mastermind, the signature, the methods, the theatrical elements, all her cross was the hands, doing the actual killing. Lessing provided access and information. A deadly collaboration, Wolfe said. The DA is going for death penalty for all 3. They won't get it, Wolfe predicted. The case is too complex, too psychological. Life without parole, most likely. Kramer stood. Maybe. Either way, they're done. 7 people are dead. But there won't be an 8th thanks to you. After he left, Lily suggested dinner at Rusterman's, but Wolfe declined, as expected. He never dined out if he could help it. Instead, Fritz prepared one of his masterpieces, duck with cherry sauce, wild rice, baby vegetables, and a salad that was art on a plate. Over dinner, Lily asked, what was it like seeing all those signatures on Delilah's walls? I thought about it. Obsessive. beautiful and terrible at the same time, like she'd turned her apartment into a shrine to her lost building. Or a war room, Wolfe added. Each signature was a battle plan, each murder meticulously planned, practiced, perfected. Could the building really have been that special? Wolfe set down his fork. I've seen the plans. It would have been extraordinary. A building that seemed to grow from the ground rather than being placed on it. Organic curves blending with geometric precision. Light used as a structural element. It would have redefined modern architecture, but worth killing for. No building is worth a single human life, but I understand the impulse. When something you've created, something that comes from your deepest self, is destroyed for venal reasons, the rage can be consuming. Wolfe took a sip of his wine. I've felt it myself when someone suggests my orchids are merely an expensive hobby. But you don't kill them, Lily pointed out. No, I merely refuse to see them again, and occasionally make cutting remarks about their intelligence and taste. Much more civilized. After dinner, we retired to the office. Fritz brought coffee and brandy, and we sat in comfortable silence for a while. The dogs were scattered around the room. Caesar by the door, Diana at Wolfe's feet, Mars and Apollo wrestling lazily in the corner, Minerva watching the street through the window. There's something I don't understand, Lily said eventually. Why did they warn Theodore? Why send the notes? Performance requires an audience, Wolfe replied. They wanted their victims to know why they were dying. More than that, they wanted them to appreciate the artistry of their deaths. The warnings were part of the show. But it led to their capture. Hubris, I said. They thought they were too clever to be caught. Even when they knew we were involved, they went ahead with the plan to kill Theodore. They had to, Wolfe corrected. The signature had to be completed. 6 deaths weren't enough. It had to be all 7 partners. Otherwise, the artwork was unfinished. Mad, Lily said. Completely, Wolfe agreed. But madness with method. Every detail planned, every contingency considered, except one. What? That someone would care enough to pay attention. Most serial killers are caught by accident or routine police work. These 3 were caught because Theodore Kramer was willing to pay for real detection, and because Inspector Kramer was personally invested. The phone rang. It was Lon Cohen, with a late-breaking addition to his story. Archie, you'll want to know this. They just searched Nathan Cross's apartment, found detailed journals going back 5 years. Every step of the plan, every murder, every thought, he documented everything, helpful for the prosecution. That's not the interesting part. He also had architectural drawings, his own designs for buildings. They're apparently quite good. He really was talented. So he gave it all up for revenge, destroyed his own future to destroy others. After I hung up, I relayed this to Wolfe, who nodded slowly. The waste, he said quietly. That's always the worst part of murder. Not just the lives lost, but the potential destroyed. Delilah Anderson could have been a great architect. Nathan Cross had talent. Even Robert Lessing was reportedly good at his job. Now they're all nothing but killers. And their victims? Also waste. Whatever they might have contributed, whatever they might have become, ended for the sake of a building that was never built. Lily left around 10, after extracting a promise that I'd take her to dinner to make up for missing her party. After she was gone, I sat with Wolfe while he read and drank beer. Something bothering you? I asked. The efficiency of it, he said. 3 people working in concert, each playing their role perfectly. If Theodore hadn't come to us, they would have succeeded completely. But he did come to us. Yes. Because of the warnings they sent, their need for performance was their downfall. You almost sound like you admire them. He looked at me sharply. I admire competence, even in evil. That doesn't mean I approve. They were brilliant and evil in equal measure. The brilliance makes the evil worse, not better. The doorbell rang then, which was unusual for the late hour. The dogs all stood, alert. I checked the monitor. It was Fritz's nephew, who sometimes helped with heavy deliveries. Package for Mr. Wolfe, he said, when I opened the door. Courier just dropped it off. The package was flat, about 2 feet by 3 feet, wrapped in brown paper. No return address, but it had been X-rayed by the courier service. Their stamp was on it. I brought it to the office where Wolfe examined it suspiciously. "Open it," he said finally. Inside was a framed architectural drawing, an original sketch of Delilah Anderson's building. It was beautiful, even in simple pencil. The building seemed to spiral up from the ground, twisting gracefully while maintaining structural integrity. At the bottom, in small letters, was written, "What might have been." There was no signature, but we both knew who had sent it. "How?" I asked. "She's in custody. Arranged beforehand, probably. A final message. Should we keep it?" Wolfe studied the drawing for a long moment. "Yes, as a reminder." "Of what?" "That beauty and evil can coexist. That talent without morality is dangerous. That the best intentions can lead to the worst actions." I hung the drawing in the office, on the wall opposite Wolfe's desk, where he would see it every day. A reminder, as he said, but also perhaps a warning. 6 months later, I stood in a construction site in Brooklyn, watching as workers poured the foundation for a new building. Theodore Kramer stood beside me, looking healthier than he had since the poisoning, though he still occasionally used an inhaler. "It's going to be beautiful," he said, watching the workers, "exactly as she designed it." The building rising from the ground was Delilah Anderson's masterpiece, funded entirely by Kramer as a memorial to the victims of the signature killings. He'd had to fight the city, the other investors, and public opinion, but he'd persevered. "You think she knows?" I asked. "I hope so. Maybe it will give her some peace. She killed 7 people. She doesn't deserve peace." "No," he agreed, "but the building deserves to exist." The trials had been a sensation. Delilah Anderson, Nathan Cross, and Robert Lessing had all been convicted of multiple counts of murder. Delilah and Nathan got life without parole. Robert Lessing, who'd cooperated with prosecutors, got 25 to life with the possibility of parole. During the trial, Delilah had maintained that the killings were justified, that Art had been murdered first. Nathan had eventually broken down, admitting that the revenge had consumed him, destroyed him. Robert had just looked pathetic, a middle-aged man who'd killed his wife for money and a younger woman who'd left him as soon as he was arrested. "I got a letter," Theodore said suddenly. "From Delilah, from prison." "What did it say?" "Just 2 words. Thank you. For building her design, I suppose." I didn't respond. We stood watching the construction for a while longer. The building would take 2 years to complete, but already you could see its potential. It would indeed be beautiful.
Any regrets?
I asked. "Every day. If we just built it originally, 7 people would still be alive. You can't know that. Maybe she would have found another reason to kill." "Maybe." He didn't sound convinced. I left him there and drove back to the brownstone. It was a Tuesday afternoon, which meant Wolfe would be in the plant rooms. I found him with Theodore Horseman, repotting some dendrobiums. "How's the building?" he asked, without looking up. "Coming along. Kramer seems committed to seeing it through. Guilt is a powerful motivator." "You think he's wrong to build it?" Wolfe considered. "I think he's trying to make sense of senseless deaths. The building won't bring anyone back, but it might prevent him from being destroyed by guilt. And Delilah gets her masterpiece built."
Does she?
"She'll never see it, except in photographs. Never walk through it, never hear people praise it. Is that victory or another form of punishment?" I didn't have an answer for that. That evening, as I was typing up notes on a new case, a simple embezzlement that would pay the bills without anyone trying to kill us, Fritz appeared with the mail. Among the usual bills and correspondence was a plain white envelope addressed to me in careful printed letters. Inside was a photograph of a building in Paris. Modern, elegant, clearly influenced by Delilah Anderson's design aesthetic. On the back was written, "She inspired more than just murder. Nathan Cross, from prison," letting us know that Delilah's influence lived on. I showed it to Wolfe, who studied it briefly before handing it back. "Burn it," he said. "Why?" "Because killers don't deserve to have the last word." But I didn't burn it. Instead, I filed it with the other curiosities from the case. The chess piece, the playing card, Delilah's sketch. Someday, someone might want to write about the signature killings, and they'd need these artifacts to understand the full story. The dogs were scattered through the office as usual. They'd returned to their normal routines, though they remained perhaps a bit more vigilant than before. Caesar especially had taken to checking the halls at regular intervals, as if making sure no mysterious envelopes had appeared. "We should get the locks changed again," I suggested. Fritz already has, also upgraded the alarm system, and added more cameras, turning the brownstone into even more of a fortress, ensuring it remains what it has always been, a sanctuary for the orchids, for us, and occasionally for clients who need protection. Think we'll ever have another case like this one? I sincerely hope not. Serial killers are exhausting. They require too much psychology and not enough pure detection. But you solved it. We solved it, he corrected. You, me, Fritz, the dogs, even Mr. Kramer, by having the courage to seek help. Detection is rarely a solitary act. The doorbell rang then. The dogs looked up but didn't react with alarm. Whoever it was, they didn't sense danger. It was a delivery man with a package from the Arendt Orchid Gardens, new specimens Wolfe had ordered. As Fritz signed for them, and Wolfe examined his new acquisitions with the excitement of a child at Christmas, I reflected on the strange turns life takes. 6 months ago, 7 people had been murdered by a trio of killers who thought death could be art. Now those killers were in prison. Their victims were memorialized, and life in the brownstone had returned to its peculiar version of normal. But on the wall of the office, Delilah Anderson's sketch remained, a reminder that brilliance and evil were not mutually exclusive, that beauty could inspire both creation and destruction. "Archie," Wolfe said, returning from his examination of the orchids, "did you file the Kramer payment?" "Deposited and recorded." "Good. We'll need the funds. I'm planning to expand the tropical room. More orchids. Better climate control. After the incident with the poison gas, I've realized our environmental systems need upgrading. Everything's about the orchids with you." "Not everything, but many things. Orchids are predictable, Archie. They respond to care in measurable ways. Unlike humans, who can take beauty and turn it into an excuse for murder. That's a dark view of humanity. It's a realistic view, but it's balanced by the fact that humans can also take tragedy and turn it into justice, as we did." The evening settled into routine. Wolfe read his book. I worked on correspondence. The dogs dozed in their spots. Fritz prepared dinner, lamb with rosemary, roasted potatoes, and a salad that was, as always, a work of art. But now I noticed things differently. The way Fritz arranged the food on the plate with architectural precision, the geometric patterns in Wolfe's bookshelves, the way the dogs positioned themselves to create defensive perimeters. Everything had a signature, a pattern, a design. Delilah Anderson had been wrong about many things, but she'd been right about one: we all leave our marks on the world. The question was whether those marks would create or destroy. As I climbed the stairs to my room that night, I passed the guest room where Theodore Kramer had nearly died. It had been cleaned, aired out, returned to its pristine state. But I knew that if you looked closely at the heating vent, you could still see the marks where Robert Lessing had attached his deadly device. Some signatures, it seemed, couldn't be erased, but others could be transformed. In Brooklyn, a building was rising that would be beautiful and functional, a work of art that would shelter people instead of destroying them. It would bear no plaque mentioning Delilah Anderson, no acknowledgement of the murders that had made it possible, but it would exist, and perhaps that was signature enough. I paused at my door, looking back down the hallway. Caesar was making his rounds, checking each room with professional thoroughness. He paused at my door, looked up at me with those intelligent eyes, and gave a small wag of his tail. "All clear?" I asked. He woofed softly and continued his patrol. In the brownstone on West 35th Street, we all had our roles to play, our signatures to leave. Wolfe with his orchids and his detection, Fritz with his cooking, the dogs with their protection, and me with my records, my observations, my occasional burst of action. Together we'd stopped 3 killers who'd turned murder into performance art. We'd saved Theodore Kramer's life. We'd brought justice for 7 victims. Not bad for a detective who wouldn't leave his house and his assistant who sometimes wished he would. I went to bed thinking about signatures, the ones we choose to leave, the ones left for us, and the ones we try to erase. In the morning, there would be new cases, new problems to solve, new signatures to decipher. But tonight, the brownstone was secure, the killers were in prison, and the only signatures that mattered were the ones on Wolfe's check and in Fritz's cookbook. Sometimes, that's victory enough.